To discuss the case, I think that the brain proves God. So if you look at all the ancient religions, a lot of them at least, they all talk about the third eye, which is located on the forehead. In Matthew 6:22, Jesus says, the light of the body is the eye. Therefore, if your eye is single, the whole body is filled with light, right? The seal of God is written on one's forehead. The mark of the beast is in the forehead, not on the forehead. And your spirituality and humanity is all controlled through your prefrontal cortex, whereas exactly where the Bible as well as the ancient religions predict our spirituality center is, hence the third eye or the seal of God.
So the prefrontal cortex is partially responsible for things, but spirituality has been shown throughout the brain, and one of the more primary areas is the parietal lobe, which is not in the forehead. That's on the side of the brain.
So Ben says that the parietal cortex is the main player in this process. This is from the Library of Medicine.gov website, and I'll link it. It reads, 12 healthy volunteers, 6 of whom religious, 6 non-religious, showed that religious experience may be a cognitive process mediated by pre-established neural circuit involving dorsolateral, prefrontal, dorsomedial, frontal, and medial parietal cortex. There is substantial evidence from the psychology of religion to suggest that people are prepared for religious experiences, and this readiness is probably mediated by the dorsal medial frontal cortex, leading to the commonly reported felt immediacy of religious experience, and the studies linked. The experience, however, becomes religious when people consciously identify the experience as consistent with their own religious schema. This cognitive process most probably involves the dorsolateral, prefrontal, and medial parietal cortex. Therefore, the prefrontal regions mediate both the preparedness for religious experience and the conscious cognitive process involved in the appreciation of religious experience.
I already mentioned that the prefrontal cortex is part of something. You are claiming that the prefrontal cortex is the primary reason that we're spiritual. I disagree with you, and I mentioned why I disagree, because I see that the science supports that the parietal lobe plays an incredible role in this, especially specific parts of the parietal lobe. So do you disagree with that?
I do, and I encourage everybody to go look up the brain activity that's being used.
Buddhists and the Franciscan nuns who were in prayer, because they were very intensely focused, and in those individuals, the frontal lobes actually increased activity.
But Dr. Newberg isn't out to prove or disprove anything. He can tell you what happens in the brain, not why.
Can I believe everything I see on YouTube?
No, of course not.
25 seasons, zero proof of God.
But when it's a clinical
so it's YouTube
and it's reputable studies.
So is YouTube.
Hang on. A group of nuns come in, and we would scan their brain while they were doing a type of prayer called centering prayer. And some of the areas of the brain that we noticed that were particularly associated with this practice were the prefrontal cortex, and you heard a little bit about that, and so the frontal lobes that help us with our ability to focus attention and modulate our emotional responses. You can see that there's more activity. In this case, there's kind of this red blob of activity that you don't see here when they're just at rest, when they're not doing that particular prayer practice.
Is it possible that I could find on YouTube something that says that it's a study that isn't actually a study? They just said it.
Oh, 100%. But tell me, what's more productive? A piece of paper telling you an analysis or a camera?
Yes.
What's more productive to humanity to witness a study?
Able to see where the tracer goes, and we can look at blood flow changes, and we can see areas of the brain that are turned on or turned off during those practices. And much like MRI, we can quantify these findings and try to determine exactly where those changes are, where the significant changes are, compare groups of people, and so forth.
Hey, you got this claim about the brain and God and stuff. Point us to any one thing that could indicate that.
Be a very staunch atheist, but love to meditated on a daily basis. So we got this kind of crazy idea. We said, well, why don't you meditate on God, since you're now meditating on something that you don't believe in? And what was kind of interesting there is you can see when we look at the frontal lobes, not much happens. So the brain didn't really do very much.
It's a problem that you're not interested in these studies as much. You seem to be very dismissive of them.
This is an overview of the study that Ben's referring to. Among Carmelite nuns, recollecting their most intense mystical experiences in order? What does that even mean? Among Mormons, and across tasks simulating religious practices? This is so vague, and this is supposed to be the study that's supposed to silence all others in accordance with Ben and secular's ideologies.
That's in no way, shape, or form going to be enough to indicate what you're actually claiming is true, okay?
And I did find this, which kind of elaborated on how they conducted their analysis. It reads, researchers at Yale and Spirituality Mind-Body Institute at Columbia University interviewed 27 young adults to gather information about past stressful and relaxing experiences as well as their spiritual experiences. The subjects then underwent fMRI scans while listening for the first time to recordings based on their personalized experiences. While individuals' spiritual experience differed, researchers noted similar patterns of activity in the parietal cortex as subjects imagined experiencing the events in the recordings. What kind of study is this?
That's misleading data. You're not proving what you think you are using this scan.
The first scan, when he was in prayer.
Pastor Stoltzfus's scan showed that his frontal lobe was active when he prayed in English.
More or less valuable information. And the answer to that, almost always when it comes to medicine and science, is going to be a peer-reviewed paper of some kind.
This misleading peer-reviewed paper from Yale University that they're putting their faith in eerily reminds me of one of the most famous Yale University students in American history.
Rarely is the question asked, is our children learning? And find out that the literacy level of our children are appalling. Why don't you volunteer? Why don't you help mentor a child how to read? I know the human being and fish can coexist peacefully.
I think we ought to raise the age at which juveniles can have a gun.
Karen is with us, a West Texas girl, just like me.
I got you, Ben. Peer-reviewed study.
The atheist's lack of desire to personally observe testing and prefer a mere paper review is the exact reason why they criticize Christians for believing in talking serpents, while themselves putting blind faith in shape-shifting talking monkeys.
Hey, that's a good method there, Rarity Boy.